Hello friends, if you're new, welcome to my channel. Why don't you go down, hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you don't miss any episodes. As for my fans and subscribers, welcome back. I do appreciate you. Today's topic, the emergence of Israel, the statehood of Israel. When I say Israel, I'm specifically referring to the Northern Kingdom. First, a note on Judah. Israel's neighbors knew of its existence, and by the mid-9th century, they took that fact into consideration. A state that would threaten another state doesn't pop up overnight. Now, I say Judah and not Israel because there is extra biblical evidence of a David, and David was based in Judah. Also, his son Solomon, there is also extra biblical evidence. We can fix Solomon's death at around 923, plus or minus a few years, synchronizing it with the raid of Shoshenq, which occurred around 920, perhaps 918. Shoshenq's raid is said to have taken place 5 years after Solomon's death. A minimum rule of 40 years, a round number in the Bible, and then into David's rule, brings us to the mid-10th century. This then settles the question of a Judahite state. But it does not settle the question of whether David and Solomon's rule extended to a northern kingdom of Israel. It is noted that Jerusalem is conspicuously absent from the Shoshenq list. However, some scholars explain this absence by the fact that the well-established northern kingdom of Israel was the greater threat. The question that remains then is whether the northern Israelite state was an extension of a contemporary Judahite state in the south, or whether such a state rose independently. We will be looking at this through an archaeological perspective and not taking the Bible at face value. What caused this impetus toward statehood? While we do not know conclusively, it is safe to assume that the well-documented Philistine expansion in the north is an adequate explanation, while in the south, statehood can be explained by the collapse of the Canaanite culture. The best evidence for Judahite rule in the north in the 10th century comes from the 4 entryway gates and casement walls at Hazor and Megiddo, the same type, in fact nearly identical, to be found at Gezer at the same time period. Controversy arises from the dating of these, though surprisingly not due to people trying to prove the Bible. A few archaeologists insist on a low chronology, and carbon-14 dates are not yet available. Carbon-14 dates from pottery range from the 10th to the 9th century, making a united monarchy possible, but far from certain. Now we turn to the biblical narrative, which I will analyze in view of the archaeological evidence. This evidence shows at least one state, and maybe two. States in this period always had kings. We will examine these texts in light of the archaeological evidence, because archaeology always wins. First, a note on terms. In this context, disproven means there is a contradiction, with the archaeological data considered definitive. Proven is used in more of a jurisprudence sense, meaning preponderance of evidence or beyond a reasonable doubt. This obviously is not the scientific definition, and I said I would tell you when I was using these terms outside of science. Unproven means either insufficient or ambiguous evidence. Saul, the first biblical king, supposedly did a number of things, including enslaving Moab, conducting military campaigns in Ammon, Edom, and Gilead, and taking tribute, defeating the Arameans in Syria, and extending his power to Tyre. Did these things really happen? Was there even a King Saul? Based solely on the Bible, we can estimate Saul's reign to be circa 1020 to 1000, and there are some destruction levels dated to this time. For example, there is destruction at Megiddo during this time. However, Saul would have been more along the lines of a chieftain than a king. The destruction of Megiddo at this level is too massive to have been carried out by such a person. Evidence shows that this destruction was caused most likely by an earthquake and not King Saul. Tal-Batash, a Philistine settlement also known as Timnah, continued into the 10th century. Even though excavators interpret it as being under Israelite control, it most likely contained mixed ethnic identities, being on the border of Philistia and Judah. So, what does this tell us? Biblical claims of Saul's wars with the Philistines, including site destructions, have little archaeological support. The claims that Saul fought against the Amalekites, Ammonites, Moabites, Edomites, and Arameans equally finds no support. There are only two possible positive correlations between the Bible and archaeology. In 1 Samuel 17, 1-3, we read of Saul fighting the Philistines between quote-unquote Soko and Azekah. We know where both of these sites are located. This battle site is tentatively set at KKIVa. Also, Saul apparently had a stronghold at Gibeah, identified with Tel el-Ful, where a fortress dated to the 11th century has been unearthed. Anyone aspiring to leadership in Israel at this time would have been coming out of a village culture and would therefore be pretty much rustic, which is precisely how the stories in Samuel describe King Saul. Samuel describes Saul as a farm boy who was selected arbitrarily, and the idea that such a boy or man could have mustered and led an army of villagers against well-established city-states stretches credulity. Well, friends, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, hit that like button, press the subscribe button, and if you want to know when I come out with new content, hit the bell next to the subscribe button. My Twitter, Discord, email, PayPal, and website links are in the description, along with the source that I used for this episode. Best way to reach me is Twitter, next best is email. I have a merch store on my website, so go check it out. Also, please leave comments in the comment section. Not only do I love hearing from you, but it triggers the YouTube algorithm. Don't forget, I choose my comment of the week on my Saturday live streams from my edited videos. Keep learning and searching for truth. Here are a few videos from my library. If you have not watched them yet, go ahead and watch them and tell me what you think. Until next time, friends, stay safe and goodbye.